when we think of villains, we usually picture some kind of external monster, right? A force of evil that exists completely outside of us. But what if the greatest villain was never out there at all?
Today, we're going to dive into a really revolutionary perspective on the figures of Iblees and Jinn. We're drawing on an incredible analysis by Dr. Hani to see how the Quran itself, when you look closely, can unlock this profound psychological understanding that pretty much challenges centuries of tradition.
Okay, so to really get how big a deal this interpretation is, we've got to start with the story most of us probably heard growing up. So the traditional story, it paints Iblees as this totally separate supernatural being. He's this powerful entity made from fire, gets kicked out of heaven because he's too arrogant to bow to Adam, and now his whole mission is to tempt humanity away from God. Sound familiar? But here's where Dr. Hani's approach comes in, and it's both simple and incredibly powerful. The idea is to let the Quran interpret itself. So by setting aside all the external traditions and just focusing on the text's own internal logic and its language, a completely different picture of Iblees starts to take shape.
All right, so what are these clues that are supposedly hiding in plain sight? Let's get right into the evidence that Dr. Hani presents. Okay, the first major clue is all about how the Quran actually categorizes Iblees. So you've got one verse that says, all the angels prostrated, no exceptions. But then another verse comes along and tells us explicitly that Iblees, the one who refused, was of the Jinn. Now that is a huge distinction. He wasn't some fallen angel. He was something else entirely.
And that, of course, brings us to the next big question. What does Jinn actually mean? Well, if you go back to the linguistic root in Arabic, janana, it means to conceal. It's used to describe anything that is hidden or unseen or operates out of sight. Now, this suggests that maybe Jinn isn't a creature, but a concept, the state of being concealed.
And right there, that single linguistic clue, it's the key. It is the key that unlocks this whole thing, and it completely reframes our understanding of who, or maybe what, Iblees really is. This is where the whole perspective just flips on its head. In this view, Iblees isn't some external devil whispering in your ear. No. It's an internal inevitability. It's a direct consequence of our amazing ability to think for ourselves.
I mean, just think about that for a second. To have real free will, we have to have the ability to make mistakes. We have to be able to get things wrong. That built-in potential for error, that internal pull toward flawed logic and arrogance, that is Iblees. It's the necessary flip side of the coin of having an independent mind.
And this just brilliantly explains that whole thing where Iblees claims he was made from fire. It's not literal. Fire, in this metaphor, represents a man-made, dim light. It's flashy, it's fast, it's destructive, and it's based on flawed human reasoning. But humanity, made from clay, represents something totally different. A potential to be molded slowly, deliberately, thoughtfully, to build something that lasts. So if Iblees is this internal concept, this tendency for error, what does that mean for the Jinn? How does this new understanding change how we see them?
What's really fascinating is the Quran even calls Iblees our zawj, which means our counterpart, our pair. This is huge. It means he isn't separate from us at all. He's an integral part of our own nafs, our own psyche. He's the other side of our coin, the capacity for error that actually makes our choices meaningful.
So let's connect the dots. This means the Jinn are not external spirits or creatures. They are the concealed parts of our own minds. Iblees is the ultimate example, the archetypal Jinn. So when a person gives in to their own arrogance and flawed logic, they are, in that moment, embodying the characteristics of a Jinn. It's an internal state, not an external being. Okay, so let's step back. If Iblees isn't some guy with a pitchfork and Jinn aren't spooky ghosts, then the great spiritual battle isn't happening out there somewhere. It's happening right here, inside each and every one of us.
And this internal battle, it has a playbook. Iblees, this internal pull, works by exploiting our own psychological flaws. It's that voice that tells us to just follow tradition without asking questions. It's the temptation for reputation and wealth. It's the seduction of looking pious on the outside without any real connection inside. And maybe most importantly, it's what traps us in our own cognitive biases, our mental shortcuts, our laziness, and our arrogance.
So what does all this mean, really?
It means the Quran isn't just telling us a scary story about a bad guy. It's handing us a diagnostic manual for our own minds. Once we learn to identify these internal, Iblees-like tendencies in ourselves, that's when we can start the real work of self-correction and genuine spiritual growth.
And that's the final, powerful idea here. By reframing Iblees from some monster into a mirror, this analysis ultimately empowers us. It suggests that the greatest battle we will ever face is against our own potential for error, and that the key to victory isn't found in fighting shadows, but in mastering ourselves.